Let me ask you a simple question. Do you know your plant's pronouns? Is it he? Is it she? Is it male or is it female? That's what we're going to get into in this video. So if you're new to growing cannabis indoors or at home and you don't know the difference between a male and female plant, do yourself a favor, sit down and watch this video. Hey guys, what's up? It's Chris here from Ambrosia Buds. And probably one of the biggest mistakes that I make as an experienced grower is that when I'm dealing with new growers, I just automatically make the assumption that they know the difference between male and female plants. And I'm coming to find out that's not the case. For me, I've been doing this so long, so it's just common knowledge that I know the difference between a male and female plant. But for somebody that's, just starting out to grow cannabis, and especially somebody that might not even grow house plants and know anything about gardening, I can totally understand that this might be new knowledge to you. So I figured what I'd do is take a couple of minutes, make a video, and just break this down for all the new gromies. Okay guys, so what we'll do in this video is I'll break down the difference between male and female plants, how to spot them, what to do, once you get a male plant, how to use a male plant. We'll also dive a little bit into hermaphroditic plants, not transgender plants, guys, hermaphroditics. What causes that, and then also how to choose the right seeds and the right genetics to avoid getting something that you don't want. Okay guys, so first and foremost, when it comes to growing cannabis, what you're shooting for are buds. That's why you're growing, and that comes from a female plant. Male plants do not produce the buds and the colas that everyone's used to smoking, seeing, and growing. You know what I mean? Male plants produce pollen sacs. Now, pollen sacs are, pollen is necessary for breeding to creating more seeds. But if you want seedless cannabis, like quality cannabis, you don't want to have any male plants. Now, when it comes to just regular seeds, and I'll get into the seed selection process at the end of this video, like how to order your seeds, like to avoid all this. But if you just have, like, let's just say 10 regular seeds, okay, there's no guarantee, there's no guru that can look at those seeds and be like, oop, that one's male, oop, that one's female. Don't believe any of that shit, man. There's no fortune teller or cannabis that's going to be able to tell from a regular seed, if it's male or female. I always tell everybody it's a dice roll, guys. It's a 50-50 shot what those seeds, if they're regular, because you have to realize you have autos, and you have feminized, and then you have photo feminized and photo regulars, and we'll get into that in a minute. But there's no way from telling from seed what the plant is going to be, either male or female. So if you want to grow, if you have 10 seeds and you want 5 female plants to grow, you're going to want to plant all 10 of those seeds. And there could be there's a possibility that all 10 of those might come out female, or 9 of them, you know what I mean? But if that's the case and you only have room for 5, just pick, your favorite 5 and give the other ones to your buddies. But yeah, so as far as determining, from seed what the plant's going to be male or female, sexing the plant, there's no way. I've heard all kinds of different ideas, and you're not going to read it's not like reading tea leaves or something in a cup. It's just 50-50, guys. You might get lucky, you might not. Like I said, it's a dice roll. But that's also why they sell feminized seeds. So if you order feminized seeds, those seeds are guaranteed to all come out female and no males. Okay, so how do you determine the difference between a male and a female? For one, you're not going to see it in your vegetative state. So when you're growing under an 18-hour light cycle and 6 hours of darkness, your plant is not going to show any form of sex. There are a couple of things I will say though that, like, I can spot as an experienced grower that kind of hints towards a male might be, or a plant might be male, but you really have to know the genetics, because a lot of breeders now aren't testing or they're not stabilizing their genetics, and they're not testing them. And that's kind of why I stick with a lot of the old school genetics, because once you know how a gene grows, how the DNA of a certain strain grows, if you see something that's like a little hanky on one plant, that's a sign. And what am I talking about? So by nature's design, male plants usually want to grow taller, and they're stretched out in between the nodes, or where the branches kick out. So, and the reason for that is the male wants to be taller so it can get the pollen as high as possible to spread across a field pretty much to pollinate all the female plants in order for that genetic to survive. Look, even in the plant kingdom, guys, the male is just trying to spread his seed. But so, you know, female plant, but certain strains just grow different and stuff like that. But the way you actually determine the sex of your plant is when you flip them. And what do I mean by flipping? That's when you swap your light back to 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness, turning the plant or igniting the plant to go into a flowering or budding stage. And it usually takes about a week to 10 days. Some plants may take a little longer, so 2 weeks. But normally within a week to 10 days, you're gonna see the plant start showing signs of sex. Now, it's exciting if it's a female, but you know, if you start spotting a male, and I'll get into how to spot that in a second, you know, don't worry just yet, because it still takes a good 5 to 6 weeks for the male to actually produce pollen that can pollinate, you know, your plant, causing it to start producing seeds. And the reason you don't want the seeds, well, I mean, if you're in a breeding program, like I'm crossing strains right now and stabilizing them, so I do want seeds on certain plants. But I mean, the reason you don't want seeds on, and there's a couple of arguments I'll get into later down the road in videos about this, is but once a female plant becomes pollinated, the energy that it's using to create the buds and the colas and everything that you want so bad, and all the crystals, well, that energy is diverted, not all of it, but some of it's diverted in order to generate the seeds. So, and the nutrients, you know what I mean? So you want as much energy, you know, you're trying to maximize your bud growth. So that's kind of one of the main reasons you don't want seeds. But so what happens is, like, after about 7 to 10 days, once you flip your plants, you'll start seeing signs of sex, okay? And these signs will happen at the nodes, and that's right where the branches come off the main stalk. So if this is the main stalk and I have a little branch, and that little crevice, you're gonna start determining, you're gonna see what you need to determine if it's a male or female plant. And if it's a male plant, males go down, females go up. All right, and I'll tell you why I'm doing these signs. Males will produce pollen sacs. When they start, they're usually clusters of 1, 2, or 3. And they're little nut sacs, guys. They're the plant's little baby balls. And they'll hang down, and then once they grow, it's usually a 3-leaf thing, and they bust open and pollen spread. Now the females will have pistils or hairs, and I'm not trying to sound sexist, guys, but I call them pussy hairs, and they grow up, and it'll be 2 hairs, okay? Sometimes, I'm not even gonna get into that if you guys are new, and it's 2 hairs that go up. And the reason these point up is this is designed by nature, is because when the wind's blowing, like it is now, it wants to catch that pollen. You know, and if a tree, imagine a male plant's taller, so the male plant's up here with the pollen sac way up here, it pops, it's falling, it'll catch it, and then once it catches it, it's fertilized, or it's impregnated, if you will, and it'll produce seeds. But then comes the hermaphrodites. And guys, I'm not trying to like ruffle anybody's feathers with, I've never had a transgender plant, but I've had many hermaphroditic plants, and I'm going to tell you how most plants become hermaphroditic for new growers. I would say 60% out of the time your genetics are solid. 70% out of the time most genetics are solid, okay? But I'm gonna, if I was a gambling man, I would bet money that for new growers, if you end up with a plant that starts out female and then turns hermaphroditic, I know what you did. You were going in that plant during its dark period and checking on it when it should have been resting in complete darkness, and you had a light on. And what happened, and I'll explain to you why that happens, and it is by design, guys. You have to realize Mother Nature is probably the ultimate fucking organic engineer. So your plant, I'm not going to say it's cool to go check on your plants in the dark period during the vegetative state, but when they're in the flowering state, it's probably the most crucial to leave them the fuck alone when they're in the dark. And the reason for that is, once you trigger them to go into flowering, they think winter's coming, no matter what, you know, season it might be outside of your grow area or your tent or wherever you're growing at, your basement. But to them, winter's coming, and they're on a clock. They have to they have to produce all the fruits they can before the end of winter in order to you know, continue their genetic code into nature. And if you start disrupting those plants that are in flowering during their dark cycle, that's the #1 cause for a plant to go hermaphroditic. And the reason for that, it's a survival tactic. So what happens is the plant thinks something's going on wrong, and the plant genetically started out as a female, and then you know, but it's like, shit, something's happening. I need to produce pollen sacs in order to pollinate myself as a single mother plant, if you will, and you know, and get these colas and these buds to get some seeds in it, so you know, I can live on as far as my genetic code. So guys, that's the #1 cause, I would say, especially when I'm dealing with new growers. You know, they call them the nanners, like, because, and dude, them plants can go hermaphroditic like in the last 2 weeks. So no matter how eager you are to harvest, just leave them fuckers alone during the dark period. I cannot emphasize that anymore, because the last thing you want to do is to cause just one of your female plants to go hermaphroditic in a tent or a room that you might have a dozen of, because it only takes one male plant to pollinate an entire crop. Pollen can literally travel for like 2 miles, guys. So even if you have all females on an outdoor crop, and somebody's got one male plant that they don't even know is a fucking male because they haven't watched this video, and it's on their back balcony or deck like this one, and it's blowing in the wind, that could literally pollinate your entire outdoor. So that's just something to think about. But another reason for plants to go hermaphroditic, it's just bad genetics. It happens, it does happen, and that comes from seed breeders and seed companies just not stabilizing their strains, not crossing them back, and just you know, not testing them either. So, but it is a risk, but it's a lower risk. Like, I'd say maybe 10-15% of plants that are hermaphroditic are because of bad genetics, where I'd say the other 85-90% are definitely just newbies, new gromies, going in those rooms in the dark period. And you can, if you want to check your plants in the dark period, you just got to get the right flashlight, man. You don't want a red, you need a green spectrum flashlight, or just a green filter. Like, there's definitely ways to check on your plants, but I mean, guys, just leave them fucking alone. Like, do you like people bugging you when you're sleeping? No. So let me break this down too, as far as how this affects the seeds you should order. So nowadays, when you have seeds, there's a couple of different selections when you're looking at the titles. And if you're new to growing cannabis, you might not be aware of this. So there's autos, there's photo femmes, and there's regular femmes, okay? Your autos are pretty much all feminized seeds. And what a feminized seed is that guarantees that all those seeds will come out all female. So you don't have to worry about the males. That's a nice thing. Now, the feminized seeds, because of the alteration of that, does have a tendency to spring a couple of hermaphrodites depending on the strain. So, you know, you really have to, I stick to old school strains like OG Kush, Alien Tech, Black Domina, just like, I don't even know if the skunk strains around, like DJ Short's Blueberry, the old real Jack Herer and stuff like that. But when you get all these crazy fucking hybrids that are out now, you know, there could be a possibility that some of those feminized seeds might throw hermaphrodite. That's why it's also important to not constantly be checking your plants, but you always want to go check on them, you know, every day, just to give them a little pat on the back that they're doing good. And they'll give you a pat on the back too by growing you nice fat buds. So you have the autos, which are mainly feminized. And what an auto seed is an auto seed is it's an automatic timer. So it doesn't matter how many hours of light you're giving it. Basically, an auto seed is going to start flowering at a certain period. It doesn't require a 12-hour dark period and a 12-hour light period, but you're looking at 90 days from start to finish for an auto. Now, when you have a photo feminized seed, what that means, the sex is controlled by the photogenic period or the light period. So 18 hours is your vegetative state, and then 12 hours is your flowering and budding state, and that's when you determine the sex. So with those seeds, if you're getting a 10-pack, like I said, it's a dice roll. If they're photo regulars, it's 50-50. And it might, you know, you might get like if you get a 10-pack, you might get 8 males, you might get 8 females. There's no way of telling it. And then there's, yeah, that's photo regular. So photo feminized are just feminized seeds. So when you're ordering, that's something to consider too. I will say this, and I know for new growers, space is probably limited. You know, you want all females. Now that I've been in this game for a while and I've seen some radical changes in the industry and the genetics, I've actually started leaning, well, for one, after this season, I'm probably not ordering any more seeds unless it's for my breeding program. So I'll always order photo regulars, but I mean, because I'm creating my own seeds and stabilizing my own genetics now at Ambrosia Buds. But with the regular seeds, there's less manipulation in the genetic code, so you run into less problems. I just feel it's more natural and more organic to grow from a photo regular seed than it. I mean, I've had no squabbles with, you know, getting feminized seeds, and I really haven't had the need for autos, so I don't have the best experience when it comes to autos. I mean, I have a buddy that I got into growing that started with autos. But I mean, it's all to each their own. I think autos do play a really cool role for somebody that's new and doesn't understand the 18-hour, the flowering and the vegetative state, and somebody that wants to keep plants small. But I've also seen people grow autos huge. So I mean, but I don't like messing with the DNA of something that's been around for 1,000 years and has been doing great all on its fucking own. You know what I mean? It's like mankind only screws shit up. But other than that, guys, if you like what you're hearing, and if you are new to growing and you want some tips, like ring the notification bell or just subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, you know, comment below. And check out the description too, because what I've been doing is I've started some Pinterest boards. Just so I have a board for books that you should read if you want to get into growing. I have a book or a board just for lights, and they're all linked back to an Amazon, you know, link, so you can order it right there. And yes, I get a kickback for it. Don't hate me for that. And then what else do I have? I just have some random gears and gadgets, like my Alta infuser that I got, which is an ultrasonic infuser, my bowl trimmer, and just anything that I use, I put on those boards to help. You know, it helps me because I do this all by myself. But that's it, guys. Take it easy. Peace. Stay green and keep growing.